One very famous YouTuber described this car as the worst car he's ever reviewed. So is he right? Well, this is a Fisker Ocean. I'm about to tell you all about it. What's good about it, what is bad about it, but I don't think it's all bad. So it's a little known car. I'll tell you a bit about it. I'll show you around a little bit more, and I'll tell you exactly where it does go wrong, but where it also does quite a few things right. So my name's Richard, this is RSEV, and this is a Fisker Ocean 1 Hyper Extreme. So I won't go into too much detail, but Fisker is a brand by Henrik Fisker. Now they were around a few years ago, and he even spent a bit of time at Tesla before, and we do a lot of Teslas here. But anyway, Henrik Fisker had Fisker. In fact, he had the Karma was the only version they put into production. I've actually driven that car, and it's sort of similar. It has some really cool things about it, but it was slightly flawed. I spent a couple of days in one of those in the States once, so I rather liked it though. It had personality, and I think this is similar. This is called the Fisker Ocean. Now, Henrik Fisker is behind some pretty famous designs, to some extent at least, BMW ZA and Aston Martin Vantage. So he comes from a design background. He's got his name to some pretty cool cars. Hasn't had a brilliant success with Fisker as a company producing cars before, has come back producing this, and this is made by a company in Austria who also made things like the Mercedes E-Class and BMW 5 Series and Toyota Supra. So it's got a name behind it, it's got manufacturing behind it. So why has it been slated as the worst car ever reviewed? Well, that's all down to software, really. So coming on to more of that in a bit, but this car is let down by the fact it's got a kind of underdeveloped software system. This one here is now software version 2, so it's as good as it can currently be, but it is still flawed. So I'll go through some of that with you. But crucially, to drive and what it feels like and how it's made actually all seems pretty good. I actually quite like driving this car. It's rather nice, it's very comfortable, it's quite spacious, it's got some really good features which I'll show you around. But Fisker are currently in some financial difficulty again. They've been hit in the headlines, and so the Fisker Oceans, there's not that many around in the first place. They were listed at about 60,000 new for one of these, but they're around now, and in fact we've already sold this car for well under half of that price. So there's some good bargains if you don't mind taking a little bit of risk, because there's a bit of a, let's say, turmoil about the future of Fisker. And we have, the buyer of this car does know that it is a bit up and down, but there's some good bargains to be had. And if they get funding, this car could well be worth a lot more again. If they don't, then it's going to be more difficult to maintain and keep going in the future. But the component parts alone are at least worth its money. You've got to bear in mind, this has got a 113 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's massive. And that's the same as over 8 Tesla Powerwalls. So could you just use the battery pack for energy storage? Perhaps so. Anyway, let's have a bit of a look around the car. So I'll show you around it, what features it does have, and then where it is let down, but could easily really be fixed with software. I don't think it's a bad car at all. So just start at the front of the car and show you around it a little bit in case you just haven't seen one of these before. You've got the big Fisker badge on the bonnet here. Now this bonnet or front does not open. You cannot open it. In fact, you can't even pull a lever inside to open it. To get to this, you have to pull this panel off, and then you actually have to use a couple of 40mm bolts out, and then you can lift this up. And you've only got some electrical gubbins in there, and the front motor is four-wheel drive, so not much to see. You've got LED lights, which aren't matrix or dynamic yet, but that could happen with software. LED light strip across the front here, and you've got then this kind of rugged plasticky bit under here. There's no active flaps, I don't think. We do have parking sensors, we do have a front camera, and there is a radar, but the radar kind of distance control, lane keeping, autopilot type system is not a thing yet. It's been said that could follow with software. It's got the hardware. Let's see if that eventually happens. Coming around to the side now, we've got the orange reflectors here, so it's compatible with US cars, so we wouldn't normally have an orange reflector on the front here, but US cars do, so that's there. This one's got a huge 22-inch wheels, which normally have a cover on here, which has got a kind of 3-spoke carbon fibre look. I'm not a big fan of 3-spoke looking wheels, so what we did here actually was pop the cover off, put a centre cap in, and I think then you've got some pretty good looking 22-inch wheels. I think they're okay. Still got big tyres on this though, so you still got a bit of sidewall even though they're 22 inches. And it means this car does ride very nicely. It's actually comfortable, nice car. I like this nice paint finish on this car. Fit finish, all seems pretty good. The paint quality is really nice. It's nice and reflective, especially in the sun like this. pop-out handles, a bit like the Jaguar I-Pace. And actually, when you look on the little plastic bit up here, there's little pictures like a surfer man there and some other stuff going on there, like people sitting on the beach or something. In fact, there's a little surfer dude on one of these blue panels on the roof, so it's got some funny little touches to it. They thought about doing that, but then they sort of released this car without doing much of the software side of things. In fact, people that got this car in the UK, it only came with one key. We thought we had a key missing, but no, one key was all anyone ever got. So anyway, moving on. I'll drop a few of the negative bits in as we go. Huge sunroof that opens right out, and this has got solar panels on it. Now this car's got a thing called California mode, where this huge roof retracts and then all the windows drop down, including these little windows here called dog windows. And the back window drops down as well. However, on this car there's a bug in the software and that doesn't work at the moment in terms of dropping these windows, but the big sunroof does retract, and that it's not convertible, but it's a huge opening roof. It is quite nice to drive around in on days like this with all the windows down, so I like that. Roundabout, I mean, I think it looks a bit Range Rover Evoque, to be honest. It's kind of the size of a Tesla Model Y, a bit bigger than a Range Rover Evoque, but a nice kind of practical size. I like the way these arches are quite flared out. You don't really get that in pictures, that this is quite a flared arch out here, and you've got these plastic wheel arch covers on here, which are handy, you know, parking space and such like. Get these scuffed rather than the paintwork is fine. Not fine, you don't want it to be scuffed, but it does tend to help. I've seen a few Model Ys now which have the black wheel arch trim, so it's not just for kind of rugged looks, but you get little bumper scuffs in car parks. It tends to graze that and you can easily replace that, so I think that's quite cool. There's a little light at the back here, and actually this is an orange light in there, and I think it's also part of your indicator and sort of the side running lights. It stays illuminated orange, again like a sort of US spec car. So coming around to the back, a couple of nice sort of smart LED light strips across here. I think it looks nice enough. There's a big Fisker wording on the top here. There's a big brake light strip along here. A camera there, but also a camera down here as well. So a couple of cameras for you. Now, if I release the boot here, you'll see it's a nice practical load area with a kind of level load lip there, which is good. You can sit on the side of this quite comfortably and look at the beach and everything like that. It's a practical load space. There's a bit of storage under the boot floor. What I do like is there's a 3000 watt AC power supply in here. And if I push this little button here twice, this particular one also has a tow bar. Press twice. Here we go. There it goes. That comes out, and you've got electrics there, your safety hook up there, and your hitch there. And when you're done with that, so you don't keep banging the shins on it, you can tuck it away. That's something you don't get with a Tesla Model Y. I like a fold-away tow bar. That's great. What is also handy is if you go to the beach with a surfboard, or probably more likely the garden centre or B&Q in this country, you can drop this rear window down, kind of load things sticking out the back here as well. So again, I think Fisker kind of missed a bit of a trick and lack of marketing. You could have done some great marketing with this, and I think if another brand picks it up, they could, you know, imagine the shots of people pulling surfboards out the back and stuff like that. But I think it's quite a nice design, and I like the fact it's just not too big, it's not too small, it's practical. Let's show you the space inside. So the rear seats have got three-way split folding. What's kind of annoying though is they don't go quite flat. Well, unless you kind of release the headrest to pull that up, then it kind of clears the base, and then they go very nearly flat. Pretty good, really. And three-way split folding, which is good. If I pop that back up, we then do have electric recline adjustment with a button on the side here, so I can recline that back a little bit. And as I get into the car, you'll see here as well, I'll put that centre bit back, I've got a couple of cup holders in the centre armrest, but there's also a little display screen here as well for adjusting your seat heaters, for example. I don't think it does a lot else because I don't think it has a separate zone for the climate control. But they've gone to the expense of putting a little screen in here, so you can be careful not to damage that. But as a passenger just sitting in the back here, there's loads of space. It's good. It's quite a nice flat bench, so you could also just sit in the middle and you're not all perched up on the ceiling. I've got foot space in the middle, and from each side seat I can put my feet right under, which is nice. There's a little pop-down compartment here for the couple of USBs. To USB-Cs there. And it's good that they tuck up and out of the way. A couple of hooks on the back of the seat here for hanging things on, but there's no seat pockets to kind of put gubbins in. There's no tray tables for kids or anything like that. but it's quite nice. It's interesting from the back here, you get this light coming through this solar roof. It just looks kind of cool. You can't kind of see right through it as easily as you can a normal panoramic glass roof, but I like the effect. It's different, it's interesting, and it is quite reasonably light in here. It's not as light as it would be with a full glass roof, but in here, I could sit in this car for ages. It's very practical, it's very comfortable, and I like it. What about the front? And the front here. So, again, it doesn't feel luxurious, but it feels kind of durable and rugged, and it's not luxurious. There are plastics, but they're kind of nice and rubbery. There's a kind of soft, that's not even quite Alcantara, but a kind of texture strip across the dashboard here. It's quite a good balance, I think, because it kind of feels like, you know, if it wasn't for the screen, you could sort of almost hose the interior out. It feels kind of durable and you can't really move it around. It's all quite well built and everything. It does drive solidly, no squeaks, no rattles that we had. It was all really quite pleasant. The steering wheel is notably chunky, so that feels chunky in your hands. Nothing wrong with that, is there? And it's quite a comfortable place to be. I did a couple of longer journeys on this, and I will talk to you about real world range and efficiency in a bit, but it was a comfortable car to be in. I had no problems in this at all. You've got separate window buttons and mirror buttons for adjustments there, so it's not all through the screen. And you do have this little panel here where you can control your climate control as well, with some quite chunky up and down buttons. It's the sort of thing that actually, and when you put your foot on the brake to start it, it does make an annoying bing bong. It's the sort of thing that you could operate even with gloves if you had to, a bit like Land Rovers, where they're practical even if you did have gloves on. I can hold this button here and rotate this screen around even. And that's for then sitting and watching videos and YouTube or something like that. It shows my mapping and everything, but actually, if I go to drive, it goes back to its portrait layout. And I'll come on to the software in a bit more detail in a minute. In here though, I like the little practical touch of having a tray table. That's good if you are stopping at McDonald's with a family, but it does mean you have no proper pull-down glove box, which I'd like to see both. Quite handy. One other feature when you're talking about tray tables is this little fold out, which you may have seen from other videos. I like having this. It's good, it's practical, and if you are stopping, you're on the road, and you've got a drink, or you have McDonald's or whatever, other burgers are available, I think that's cool. I like it, it's handy. And it folds away neatly into there. There's a couple more USBs. There is a wireless phone charger on there. All quite reasonable. What is quite interesting is at the top here, I've got not just a rear view mirror, but a camera rear view mirror. So because I look over my shoulder like this, the view isn't brilliant, especially if you've forgotten to put the headrest back down after you have to pull them up to fold the seats. So I can't see much there, but if I move this around, it doesn't matter where this mirror is, it's using that camera. Remember there's two cameras at the back there, it's using the upper camera to display the rear view. I can switch that across, in which case it just reverts to a normal mirror. I'll go to there for camera view. The interesting thing about this is when you're just sat in a traffic jam and there's a car behind you, because that's quite a sort of zoomed in view, I could see the person behind me just sitting there picking their nose and doing things like that. So you've got this really kind of zoomed in view of the person in the car behind you. But look, nice touch to have when you don't have brilliant visibility there. I think it's fine. I think the new Polestar's doing something like that, isn't it? But if you do put the headrest down, you switch the mirror, you can see some stuff. Up here, we can now open up this huge sunroof. If I push this button here and hold that, no, this button here and hold that, I'll just put down the rear window actually there, look, there goes the rear window, I pushed the wrong button. So the rear window's dropped down now, and then if I do this whole sunroof, and it's massive, does retract back, and my shiny head can catch the sun. So it goes back in one stage, and a second push pushes it all the way open there. But there is something about driving with the sun blowing in your hair, apparently. Someone told me once. I do remember, it's just a long time ago now. You'll notice one last thing as well in here is that the A-pillar here has got some sensors here. They don't do anything, not yet. Again, it's got the preparation for a day where potentially this could have autopilot, FSD and things like that. It doesn't do anything at the moment, I believe, not that I think it does. One thing we don't have is a head-up display, but we do have an extra little binnacle here, which looks kind of like the one you get in a Mustang Mach-E, perhaps. Not saying it's the same part, but it's kind of the same thing. So you've got that as well as your large display. So, how buggy and how bad is this software? Well, let's just show you a little bit around it first, because it's got some good potential, then we'll talk to you about some of the bugs it does have. So let's just show a little bit around the screen first. So I've just got into reverse. You can see we've got a pretty good quality reversing camera. You can also change the view to other places here, and if I've just reversed, it would have rendered this scenery around us here. You've got cameras from the door there as well, and the wing, but it can't show both at the same time. There is also like a 3D surround camera, so it's got a bit of that. It kind of works pretty good, actually. It's all right. But actually, if I just go to drive, what you'd normally get is a view a bit like this. So that back door's open there, but you have a bit of a display which is a bit like a Tesla autopilot, shows you what the car's doing, lanes and stuff. Then you've got a bit of mapping, a bit of music, and a bit of climate control. A nice big screen. You can get it all in one screen at one time, which actually with something like a Tesla Model 3, Model Y with a smaller screen, you do have to sort of thumb around and move around a little bit. On the face of it, this kind of looks okay. You can switch between a light and a dark theme, but generally you've got a view a bit like this. Now the mapping actually uses apparently TomTom, which I haven't heard that name for a while. The mapping I found to be pretty good actually. The traffic alerts and speed cameras, I found that all okay. Didn't seem to be a problem at all. I'll put it into park actually, because as I'm in drive, you might be able to hear in the background, it goes wum, 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 quite loudly actually. Goes to neutral. It's quite a loud humming noise, isn't it? Anyway, back to the software. Let's go to park. So then you can bring up your mapping larger, you can bring up your music larger, and we do have Spotify and TuneIn and instant radio as well as Bluetooth streaming. Here your phone contacts when you're paired with that, and then you've got a little bit of stuff about your charge. So you can change your charge level, so it recommends 80% for your daily charge limit, and you can change your charging current, but only between 16 amp, 32 amp, 8 amp as well. Now I think that is quite handy actually. A lot of cars don't have this at all, but it is quite handy. For example, I found at my house when I'm charging my batteries at night from the grid, and you're plugging in the car and the washing machine is going, if you don't need to do a mega charge, just knocking the current back a bit is a handy thing to do, and the car should just have it. Our solar sky, I can go to a tab here and I can see what we're producing from our solar roof, although it doesn't really just give you a percentage. It means out of its possible capacity of charging. Ultimately, a solar roof isn't really going to give you a ton of energy. This car's added 50 miles worth of range in its time, 15 kilowatt hours, so in 6 months or so, in England in winter. So in that sense, it's actually been quite good, I think. Now, if I go to the trip display here, this is where there's a bit of an issue in that it doesn't show your efficiency when you're driving. So it shows you your trip and how far you've gone, but it doesn't show your efficiency. So you have to work those kind of numbers out if you want to know it, and it would be simple enough to add on to here. We can bring up the climate function in more detail. We do have a heated steering wheel. We've got heated seats front and rear as well. It does the job though, again, software bug. I found it would come out of auto. It would just change and the fans would go up, or it would go down, or you might leave it in one setting. Next time you get in the car, it'd be completely different. So that was one of their bugs. There's a little bit of an issue there. And then if I go to settings here, then I've got various different settings as I go for the car, a bit like in a Tesla, but just not in as much detail. Now you can see generally the screen is okay for responsiveness. It's not too bad. Let's just check here. We're on software version 2, and then you can bring up release notes of that. Strangely small. Oh, it says the TomTom logo there now. You can see it. Let's show there. And this is an Ocean 1. It's a limited edition, 3675 out of 5,000. So there we go. So the screen, its graphics and its interface is basically okay, actually. It just kind of doesn't have as many functions as you'd like it to have. I can click on profile here and pick different driver profiles. It's got that, but it's just not as detailed as something like a Tesla. But broadly speaking, actually, it mostly works okay, especially now on this software version 2. It's been all right. So what are the main bugs I've encountered with this? Well, there is a limit to the number of software functions it has. there's a brake warning message comes up when you first start the car, but it does go away straight away. Now, apparently that's normal. Now, that was what prompted us to open the bonnet and just check the brake fluid levels were okay. They're fine. We did check actually with Fisker, and they said as long as it just goes away straight away, that's normal. Okay, good stuff. There's the odd thing that comes up, like the climate just changes, that you can need to do a software reset on, which you can do so by holding a couple of buttons on the steering wheel here, and then you can do a harder reset where you leave a charge port open and lock the car, and it does a harder software reboot. But it's just kind of, at the moment, we found just to get in and drive, actually it did the job. A few funny things happen, a few things it doesn't have. But I haven't had any major issues with it, actually. The app, there is an app, I am connected on the app, but the app was fairly non-responsive. That doesn't really offer much you can do with the car. Apparently with software 2, part 3, you get kind of app unlocking, or in one section of it you get it. In fact, no, there's the option to unlock the car now from the app, it just doesn't work. There's also the option for California mode, doesn't work. So the app connection is a bit limited, and the app's very basic. If I hit my California mode up here, that doesn't do anything. That's a software bug, so that needs some rear windows calibrating. It's just a few odd things. Have you got anything else you can think of, Gins, when you drove it? It's just kind of a couple of those odd things, but it's actually mostly functional. It's just not as snazzy. So really, it just needs bringing on a little bit, you know? But I've driven cars which have no large screen and even worse software to use and stuff like that. So I don't think it's all bad, to be honest. I think it has great potential, in fact. So, yeah, a few bugs, but actually mostly okay. And when you get out of the car, it stays on unless you lock it. And to lock it, you have to use a key and a button on the key. It should have the ability to do, keyless walk away, lock in. Oh yeah, the other things when you're driving, you know, what's it like to drive? Well, the couple of things first. One is the first thing you have to do is turn off the chimes that it makes. So you have to go straight to the kind of turn off the lane assist chiming and the speed limit chiming, because they do your head in, they go on all the time. So you'll find that's the first thing you have to do. But other than that, to drive, it's nice. It's actually quite comfortable. It rides nicely, helped by massive wheels, but it rides nicely, turns in nicely. It's refined, it's quiet, it's comfortable, it's good. What about the real world range then? Massive battery, 113 kilowatt hours. Well, the car doesn't show you efficiency, but I have used this car in a couple of different scenarios. So at motorway speeds, I don't think it's the most aerodynamic, so that's where it suffers a little bit on efficiency. It has a heat pump apparently, but it's not the most aerodynamic car. But still, with that 113 kilowatt battery, I was still getting a solid 300 miles to the range on this car. If you drove it really fast down a motorway, you're probably going to be able to bring it under that, but I was thinking about 300 miles. I did a journey next to a Tesla Model Y Performance, and actually for the same journey at the same speed, it used a couple of % less battery to cover a 60-mile journey. So it does use less battery per mile. But of course, this is a much bigger battery than a Tesla Model Y. So it's not as efficient as a Model Y, but it has a bigger battery and does have real world range, which is greater than a Model Y in long range or performance. So it does have the capability. Now, another scenario is when I drive home, it's mostly through sort of A and B roads. So they're kind of 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 miles an hour for one section. And it's a quite an efficient journey. I get good efficiency from cars on that commute. Now, I only use 3% of the battery to do a 13-mile drive, and when I worked out the pro rata, it would work out to over 400 miles of range. So if you're on kind of sensible country roads, a bit of town, not just on the motorway, you could get 400 miles out of it. But you could get down to under 300 potentially as well. So it does have that capability to do big miles and big range pretty well. 170 kilowatt charging speed, which is good. And I have seen a video from another chap well known in the EV community. Actually did quite a good 1,000-kilometer challenge time with it, because it's got pretty good charging speed, quite consistent throughout, albeit he was suffering with efficiency because it was a much colder day. But I've been finding on days like this, doesn't seem to be too bad on efficiency. So it goes quite a good distance. It's got a huge battery. It's also fast though. So when I mentioned Tesla Model Y Performance earlier, it is basically as quick as a Tesla Model Y Performance. Gins nearly got run over by this massive truck there. Glad you're still with us, Gins. The performance of it is good. It does punch. Now, It has a thing called earth mode, which is its kind of efficient mode, which locks it into two-wheel drive at the front. And you do find it's a very soft pull away. You do have to be a bit more relaxed about things. You put your foot down, it does just then scrabble the front wheels. If you go to fun or hyper mode, it really then uses forward drive and picks up rather well. It is a 0 to 60 in kind of about 4 seconds-ish. It is Model Y performance quick. So there's no lacking in its potential power, but you do have to switch out of earth mode to get that from it, you know, that real punch from it. However, it is pleasant to drive, it is comfortable, it does have range capability, it feels well made, the finish of the paint's good, it's got a lot going for it. It just needs some of the software developing, enhancing, and really then you've got a very, very good car. What they need now is a reassurance with some funding that you know, parts availability in the future is going to be fine, the warranty can be upheld, there'll be people working on these cars. And it deserves it because there's a good car in there, and I think it is very easy just to slate it for the software bugs, which ultimately, look, I agree, they shouldn't be there. It should have been developed more before it's released. But there's a car that's good, just crying out for those last touches, which could happen. So I keep my fingers crossed for Fisker and a good future for them. At least it's something a little bit different. So I hope they continue going, and there's a good car there if they do. So that's my review of the Fisker Ocean one. Great car, actually, just limited by some bugs which could be fixed once they get developed with software. That's it for me. Hope that's been useful to you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in another video very soon.